Hey, what's up, Superdads? So, I have a confession to make, and that confession is that I have never really done high intensity training the way that it is advised, directed by the luminaries of HIIT. Specifically, those luminaries are recommending that you train with high intensity, really push that as far as you can, crush your workouts, and then you take a lot of time to recover, sufficient time to recover to allow both the damage to be repaired and your body to overcompensate by building more capabilities, more capacity to do work through increased strength and muscle. And I definitely do the high intensity part. I hit my workouts hard. I train pretty much except for warm up sets, every set to failure, often beyond failure with rest pause sets or eccentrics, prolonged eccentrics, these sorts of things. The place where I depart from a traditional approach, the traditional HIIT approach, is in the infrequency of that approach. I do something that would probably be more accurately termed HIFIT training. How's that for an acronym? High intensity, frequent incidental training. So what I'm adding there is the frequent incidental. In basically every one of the programs I've ever designed and how I've always trained myself and people that work with me, I always advocate for investing in what I'm calling incidental workouts. And incidental workouts are the ones that you don't plan. It's like you have a moment here, you have a second there, you're stealing a minute of time, you're waiting for a bus, you're sitting in a waiting room, these sorts of things, and you are using that time to get in a bit of training. Now, almost always, not always, but almost always, these incidental workouts are mainly populated by overcoming isometric style training. So whether that's getting in a steering wheel press while you're sitting at a red light, and I do that almost regularly, not even almost regularly, very regularly, but almost daily, and often multiple times a single day. I spend too much time in the car. But you could also be like doing things with your legs, pushing against a wall with your leg to work out some, leg muscle, whatever it is. These are all incidental workouts, and there are the possibilities with regard to them are literally infinite. The reason that I advocate these, there's several reasons, and I'm going to run through them real quick. The first one is psychological, and it comes down to building habits. It comes down to building for yourself the identity of somebody who exercises, especially for people who are new to exercise, who never really succeeded all that well in establishing exercise as part of their lifestyle. A traditional approach to HIIT, high intensity training, they can struggle with that because the frequency is too low. Now, I know that sounds crazy. Why would they struggle if the frequency is too low? The reason is because they're never getting the chance to build the habit of exercise. If you're only working out 1 day a week or 2 days a week or something like that, then let's say 2 days a week, then that's 5 days a week during which you are practicing not exercising, reinforcing the not exercising neural pathways in your brain. And for anyone who's ever read Atomic Habits, seems like every single person on planet Earth probably has at this point, a big part of it is building the identity that you want. So rather than this is the habit that I want, if you become the kind of person who does that thing regularly, consistently, without missing, then it just becomes natural to do it. So if you become an exerciser, then exercising is natural. I don't have to force myself to exercise because it's just something I do. It's something I associate with who I am, with my identity. My ego won't let me not exercise because your ego exists to protect your identity as you currently perceive it to be. So by increasing the ability, increasing the frequency through these incidental workouts, things that they can do every day, little sort of micro workouts or snack workouts, whatever you want to call them. I like incidental because it's a bigger word. You're allowing them to develop that routine of exercising. And every time they do a little incidental workout, they're voting for the identity of themselves as exerciser. And that can go a really long way to changing overall habits. So that's one reason. Another one is this. Because we're doing overcoming isometrics, you're not causing very much muscular damage. And so, the issue in HIIT training thought is that you don't want to train too frequently, because when you're training, you're causing damage, you're putting stress on your body, and that then becomes what your body has to deal with. That becomes the priority, fixing the damage that you caused, rather than recovering from and overcompensating from the previous workout that you did, right? So you're short-circuiting your own development, your own progress, by jumping in too soon and cutting it short and causing more damage that has to be dealt with. But because overcoming isometrics don't cause that kind of damage, you don't really deal with that so much. All of the stuff I've read about them, and I've been reading about these kind of isometrics for a long time, suggests that you can basically do them every day, and you'll get great results from that. And that wouldn't work with if you were squatting to failure or something every day. There are people who squat every day, but the people who squat every day, a lot of those days are lighter days, or they're practicing the squatting form, right? They're trying to perfect the technique. Rather than cause muscular damage, right? Or trade to failure, or whatever it is. So you can do overcoming isometrics with much greater frequency without coming up against the short-circuiting your gains problem. Now, having said that, I would advise, if you're going to give this a try, that you stay away from training them a lot prior to the day before you're going to train your foundational workouts. So if you are going to do bench press or chest press or something like that tomorrow, and you're trying to progress your weight, you're trying to increase each time, progressive overload on that, then it's probably not a good idea to spend a bunch of time doing an isometric chest press the day before, because your strength will be somewhat compromised. Okay, so they don't cause a lot of damage, and so you can spam them without that much fear of short-circuiting your own gains. They actually should speed up your gains, and not necessarily. They will help build muscle. Absolutely, that's true. More perhaps than that, though, is that they help you build strength, and the two are often they often go hand in hand, but they're not exactly the same thing, because there's a skill component to strength, there's a neurological component to strength, and so in some sense, when you're doing overcoming isometrics, it's the most pure form of practicing strength. So what I'm advising you to do is practice being strong with some regularity. Once a week of high intensity training is not enough practice at being strong, especially if you don't do a lot of strength involving activities elsewhere in your life. If you're a construction worker, or you're working on a farm, throwing around bales of hay, these sorts of things. And by the way, there's a reason that people who are plumbers have incredibly strong grips. People who work construction are just stronger, right? Now, of course, there's a selection bias there, but you can't attribute 100% of that to selection bias. Kids who grow up on farms, right? They talk about farm strength. Well, a lot of that comes from these sort of practicing being strong, moving heavy things around regularly. They're not always training to failure, but they don't tend to be the most muscular people, but they have a lot of strength for their body weight, typically because they're practicing strength regularly, and there's a skill element to strength. There's a neurological adaptation element to strength. So when you do this sort of high intensity, frequent incidental training, you're practicing strength a lot more, and there's a lot of benefits to that. And then probably the last reason, and this is, in my opinion, a very important one, is that there are some exercises, or some muscle groups I should say, that are very difficult to train effectively if you don't have a full gym setup. And if you're taking like a big six approach to exercise, like, okay, when are you training your hip abduction and adduction? I mean, your everything you do is in the same plane. You're not doing a whole lot of side to side stuff. But by adding in the incidental workouts here and there, one of the things I really like to do is just standing still with my feet on the ground. I like to sort of push my feet apart like this, but isometrically, so that they don't actually move, and that lights up your hip abduction muscles, and then reversing it so that you're trying to squeeze your feet together, and that really lights up the adductors. And this is something you can do when you're just standing around, and it's also something that a lot of your traditional exercises, the compound movements that you might be doing as part of your regular routine, aren't going to necessarily be addressing really well. So it's a great way to address parts of your body that aren't getting addressed otherwise, and parts that you want to have strong for stability's sake, for perhaps athletic performance sake. If you do something like jiu-jitsu, right, you want to have very strong hip adductors, that closing your legs for when you're in guard, but you're not really going to get that necessarily. Yes, squatting does work that some, but it doesn't work it as directly as if you do that isometrically. When you think about it, if you have someone in your guard and you're squeezing your legs together, that's isometric, right? You're not trying to actually make them body explode. Maybe you are. I don't know. You're crazy. Anyway, so this is my approach to it, and it's what I recommend for a lot of people. It seems to work out really well. And the last thing, and seems like a minor one, but you'd be surprised, is the element of creativity that it brings into exercise. Because if you find yourself in an environment, maybe it's a bus stop, and you look around and you say, what can I do here? What kind of incidentals can I do here? And you can pull up on the bench, you can push on that, you can kick on this or whatever it is. And I've found some surprisingly effective exercises, like sitting on a park bench and being like, wow, this bench is perfect for this exercise. And I can only really ever do this on this exact park bench. But when I'm here, I'm going to do it because it feels incredible. So there's this great element of creativity. So I hope that this has piqued your interest. Now, I really focused a lot on overcoming isometrics here. That's the one that I spend 95% of my incidental time on. There are other things I do, band exercises occasionally that I'll do, band pull-aparts, these sorts of things, because again, those don't cause a lot of muscular damage. But I think there's also, benefit to those for things like getting a little bit of a pump in the muscle. The pump itself doesn't necessarily build muscle, but by getting blood into the muscle that might be recovering from yesterday's workout, you are not short-circuiting it. What you're doing is you're making sure that blood, with all of the oxygen and nutrients that's so nutrient-rich blood, there's a reason they call it that, flow into the area that needs repair. And so it can be a great way to speed your recovery as well if you approach it the right way. So HIFIT training, that's my recommendation for those of you out there, high intensity, frequent incidental training. Let me know if you have any questions. You can check out programs that cover this kind of stuff down below. The 3-Minute Muscle program doesn't really go into incidentals, but it is free. There's also a bunch of other ones, and I recently finished one that's for the ladies out there called Synergy Strength Hourglass. So if you're looking to get a great figure in a very short amount of time, very efficiently and safely, that would be the program for you. So thanks for your attention, and I hope you all have a great day. Go be super.